Joe Biden and the Defund the Police Democrats have turned our once great cities into cesspools of bloodshed and crime. There's never been anything like it.
Now, if you listen to Donald Trump speak or watch his videos on Truth Social, both of which you should not do, that's the sort of thing that you're gonna hear. He talks about crime and he talks about bloodshed. He describes our cities as being cesspools, which I think most people in most cities would find to be a ridiculous way to portray them. But what he doesn't often focus on in these speeches, for reasons we're gonna get into, is what he actually wants to change. Now, that doesn't mean that that information is not available. It very much is. But I don't think he wants you to focus on that because he knows that these changes make him seem utterly insane and wouldn't be popular. But if you want to get an idea of what he'll do, you can of course refer to Project 2025. They have literally hundreds of pages of the various ways they would fundamentally change America. And I leave it to you, America, to decide if that's what you want to go through. But since they're trying now in a ridiculous fashion to distance themselves from Project 2025, we don't have to go to that. We can go to his own Agenda 47. That is on his campaign website, and it describes what he wants to do in a variety of different areas, including on crime. Now, there's massive overlap with Project 2025, but we need to talk about what they want to do. So he describes the cesspools. That's sort of setting up for the massive changes he wants to make. I want you to bear in mind that as we have been trying to do for months here, been trying to correct the myth that America is utterly falling apart when it comes to crime. It simply is not the case. It has not been the case. Homicide and most other violent crimes, as well as most property crimes, have dropped to pre-pandemic levels in US cities, which is pretty amazing when you think about it. Pre-pandemic is back into the Trump era. We're back at that level, in some cases lower than that level. And as Pete Buttigieg has been saying on Fox News recently, why would America want to return to the elevated crime rates of the Trump presidency, which I think is a great line and a great thing to think about. But here is what he wants to do from his false premise that Americans everywhere are literally being butchered right now. Here's some of his concepts.
I will sign a record investment in hiring, retention, and training for police officers nationwide. So important. This bill will also increase vital liability protections for officers. I will insist that local jurisdictions return to proven common sense policing measures, such as stop and frisk. Very simple. You stop them and you frisk them. We also need the death penalty for drug dealers. So important. And I'd add to that human traffickers, drug dealers and human traffickers, they get the death penalty. Watch it stop and stop quickly. Many of these carjackers and criminals are 13, 14, and 15 years old. I will order the Education and Justice Departments to overhaul federal standards on disciplining minors. That is how I will bring back public safety to America.
Okay, I'm a little bit concerned about what he thinks should go into the disciplining minors. We know he, throughout his life, has had a lot of thoughts about younger Americans. I don't know if this goes in that direction.
A storm is tearing up the digital media industry. Only our audience can save us in these difficult times. Help us reach our goal of 100,000 new members at tyt.com/team.
But effectively, we need a lot more cops, and the cops need to be completely unrestrained by any regulations or guidelines whatsoever. They can do whatever they want. They can stop and frisk. Very simple. You stop and you frisk. If I were him, I would also want to describe it in those simplistic terms. I would not want to describe that I am setting up a fundamentally racist system where people will be harassed sometimes dozens of times a month simply because of their appearance, whereas other people are allowed to go about their lives. I wouldn't want to describe it accurately if I were him either. And then a healthy dose of just killing people. There are a lot of people that are not currently being killed by the US government that he thinks should be killed. Now, that is an idea. We can have a debate as a country. Is this the direction we want to go in? I don't think that generally Americans are in support of this. I think we can learn a lot about the lies that he is being forced to tell about the state of crime in America to justify these measures. If he thought that they were truly needed, if he thought that they were truly popular, why would he be so lying about the current experience of so many American cities? I think these are great questions, but Francesca, what do you think about all this?
Yeah, I'm so glad we're doing this story. It's critical, and I'm really glad that we can actually look at some of the policies that would impact everyday people. Where it seems like, save our democracy feels a little abstract. You're like, I don't know, is it even that great to begin with? And then you hear this, and what this is, two things: what it is, and then how to counter it and run against it. What it is effectively a Duterte policy. It is, again, locking up drug dealers, even for the smallest amounts of, any kind of marijuana possession or whatnot. It is also a Nayib Bukele strategy of El Salvador, who has been just sweeping the streets for any man between the ages of, or boy between the ages of like 13 and 50, right? And just locking them up, shave their heads, have them sit in a line, take a photo for the papers, and you can claim that there's no more crime. And here's the thing: the United States, as you pointed out, is not El Salvador. We don't have the levels of violence, nowhere near. We have a fraction of them. We export our violence vis-a-vis gun sales to places like El Salvador, vis-a-vis failed drug policies to places like El Salvador. That's what happens. The United States is largely insulated from any of that. So it's wild that you would want to implement those kinds of strategies in this country where there's no, what you're talking about, carjackings? You're equating carjackings with something as serious as homicide. That's number one. Number two is, look, we have a serious problem with policing. Sonia Massey and the videos that have come out about her murder by a police officer in her home in Illinois is just devastating. It's happening every single day to people in this country. So how you run against this is we talk about people like Sonia Massey. Kamala Harris needs to present a plan. Yes, former prosecutor, of how we actually rein in the police, how we have real police reform. Yeah, she needs to actually rein in and take responsibility for some of her own policies. Although, very famously, she decided not to go for the death penalty on a person who killed a police officer in San Francisco and got reamed for it. So that is how you run against a very scary future, John. I just think that is like more terrifying than anything that Trump has uttered. So Stephen Miller, do you not hear like Stephen's writing all over that?
Yeah, I mean, Stephen Miller obviously has a list a mile long of people he thinks needs to be killed, who make him feel afraid, and he needs the government to kill them for him. I agree with that. I would also say, look, when you're talking about crime, you're gonna talk about things that are seen to be very proximal to the crime. But we also understand that the things that drive rising and falling crime very often have very little to do with funding levels to cops. Crime didn't go up during the pandemic because the police were defunded, because they never were. That's not a thing that happened. And crime didn't drop so much over the last year and a half because of these three things that Joe Biden did specifically on crime. They rose and fell because of larger macroeconomic changes. The pandemic obviously was super chaotic, and a lot of people were losing their job, and a lot of people were desperate. That is how these things work. If you want to fundamentally lower crime in a persistent, durable fashion, then it's not just about putting 20 more cops on the streets. It's about raising people's hopes for the future, the actual ability that they have to have stable jobs that pay well. That is how you do it. And Donald Trump obviously does not have the economic proposals that would actually lead to that. So if you get Donald Trump, what you will get is more crime and also more cops. And if that's what you want, then that's great. It's very much like their strategy when it comes to school shooters. They don't mind the person having an AR-15. They'll just lock the door. Okay, I personally think that the person shouldn't have the gun. I think that we should look a little bit more than just 2 inches from our face when solving our problems. But that's what Donald Trump is trying to sell you on. And the way that he's trying to sell it is by scaring the hell out of you. Thanks for watching our video. Did you know that you can support our show by becoming a subscriber? Just click the subscribe button and also ring the bell so that you get notifications when we're live or when we post new content.